Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blanche, welcome. The acting attorney general is supposed to be the people's lawyer and defend the rule of law and not act as the president's personal lawyer. But in this administration, the Department of Justice is solely focused on pleasing one man, no matter the cost. Lest anyone forget, huge banners with Donald Trump's face hang from both sides of the main Justice building. This is the big banner of Donald Trump on one side of it, so that every single person who enters that building will see it and remember exactly what that man wants them to do. You're his former personal attorney, and you know exactly what he wants. In fact, he often posts it right here on social media, his Truth Social account. He wants to weaponize the department for his own political ends. And right from the start, you and your cohorts have worked to deliver what he wants, doing his political dirty work. 2 days ago, you even suggested that there was, quote, a ton of evidence that the 2020 election was rigged against Trump. And here you are at a budget hearing asking for taxpayer funds to pursue the department's mission when you're using those funds to punish Trump's adversaries, reward his friends, and pursue his personal vendettas. It began with pardoning the rioters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th and assaulted police officers. The revenge continued with the firing of more than a dozen lawyers who represented the Justice Department in those cases. Yesterday, you created a $1.8 billion slush fund to dole out taxpayer dollars to the president's supporters, including those who attacked this Capitol on January 6th. That is pure theft of public funds.
Amen.
And rewarding individuals who committed crimes is obscene.
Obscene.
Every American
Agree.
can see through this illegal, corrupt, self-dealing scheme. You have also misspent resources on the blatant political prosecutions of James Comey and others. You couldn't find a single career lawyer to bring the first case against Comey, and lawyers resigned rather than participate in that charade. Now you've launched a ludicrous vindictive prosecution in the Seashell case. It's a shameful dereliction of your duty to pursue impartial justice without fear or favor. You've also brought criminal charges against journalists who were doing their jobs in Minneapolis. You've refused to hold accountable the DHS agents who shot and killed Renee Good. Instead, while members of the administration called both Renee Good and Alex Preddy domestic terrorists, you ordered a criminal investigation of Renee Good's partner. Hardworking professional attorneys resigned rather than engage in that abuse of power. Others in the department have been fired for telling the truth to the courts, an insidious message to send to officers of the court. You have fired immigration judges who rendered decisions the administration didn't like. More gross political interference in what is supposed to be an independent process. All told, DOJ lost over 8,500 staff last year and nearly 1/4 of its lawyers. It's so bad that you're now offering $25,000 signing bonuses and hiring prosecutors with no prior legal experience, seeking applicants who personally pledge support to the president. You've also refused to share with members of Congress the Office of Legal Counsel's purported legal justification for the blatantly illegal war the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu started in Iran. You have clear conflicts of interest between your prior job as the president's personal lawyer and your duty to ensure justice. This is especially true with respect to the cases of the survivors of the heinous crimes committed by Jeffrey Epstein. Many of those survivors are in New York City today as we speak, as part of a 24-hour public reading of the Epstein files. Many reading excerpts from their own FBI 302 reports documenting the abuses they endured.
I was there.
These survivors
I was reading.
tried to share their stories with you. Instead, you spent 2 days interviewing his convicted associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, and shortly thereafter, she was moved to a lower security prison camp.
Thank you, Senator Von Hollen. Thank you.
Mr. Blanche, the record is crystal clear. You are still acting as the president's personal lawyer, not as acting attorney general. It is hard to justify giving you any funds that will enable this pattern of wrongdoing to continue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What a disgrace. What a disgrace, right?
Thank you. Senator Collins, you have an opening statement?
I don't, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to asking questions.
She's
that
very
hear from the
concerned.
witness. Thank
Senator
Thank you,
Collins
Senator
is
Collins, for joining us,
very.
with-
Oops, sorry about that, guys. I didn't mean to do that. Sorry, I just accidentally disconnected.
U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche. He's speaking at the spring banquet.
Sorry about that, guys.
U.S. Attorney General Todd Blanche.
Little technical problem there. I didn't mean to do that. I clicked the wrong button. Let's get that back on. Sorry, we have to sit through 5 seconds of a commercial. Just in case, this is you're not.
A 13%.
Yeah, this is Todd Blanche, the acting attorney general, dipshit and a half, horrible human being, testifying before the Senate Oversight Committee today. Should be a good one, guys.
Expanding fraud prevention and ensuring our law enforcement agencies have the resources they need to protect the American people. Violent crime reduction remains one of the department's highest priorities. Since January 20th of last year, the DOJ has indicted hundreds of members of TDA, crippling their leadership and dismantling operational networks.
What a feckless. I mean, I just have to start out by saying this. What a piece of shit he is, right? A corrupt, criminal, ass-kissing, pathetic piece of shit. Just watching this, watching him sit there and just speak like everything's fucking fine. Just such profane garbage. I don't know any other way to put it. I hate to say those words, but just such garbage he is. Just trash. All of them. I agree with you. Absolutely, Catherine.
Child predators. The DEA has made thousands of fentanyl-related arrests and seized millions of fentanyl pills and hundreds of kilograms of fentanyl powder. In one August surge alone, DEA executed over 600 arrests, seized multi-ton quantities of narcotics, and recovered more than $11 million in drug proceeds. With 82 offices in 62 countries and 26 U.S. field divisions, DEA continues to disrupt global supply chains from source to street of illegal narcotics. The U.S. Marshal Service, one of the smallest federal agencies, law enforcement agencies, with roughly 3,800 deputies, arrested more than 73,000 fugitives last year, conducted 308,000 prisoner movements, and housed over 55,000 detainees and provided protection for 18 federal protectees, including Supreme Court justices and their residences. The Marshals also manage over $10 billion in seized assets and are obviously essential to federal judicial security. ATF continues to be a leader in the federal effort to combat violent firearms crime. Since January of last year, ATF has arrested more than 8,700 violent offenders and seized nearly 44,000 firearms, including 5,100 which were interdicted before reaching Mexico, which was their intended destination. ATF agents seized 2.7 million rounds of ammunition, more than 28,000 illegal explosives, and conducted over 3,500 arson and explosives investigations. They process hundreds of thousands of.
So we'll see. Well, I mean, who cares? We'll see as he continues to speak. I'll tune back in a second. It's just hard to listen to him. Just talking about, probably fudged numbers of normal things that, law enforcement is involved with. And, all of those points that Senator Von Hollen brought up, and we're going to watch these Republicans cowards try to normalize this piece of shit. And guys, I was at the, I read this morning at 5 a.m. One of my friends was one of the organizers of New York, what's happening in New York City, where everybody's reading the 24 hours of a filibuster type effort where everybody's reading all these victims and regular folks are reading from the Epstein files. So our friend, who is also just reading herself, she's putting the most of the time into this. She's a creator. Her name is Eliza. You might follow her on Instagram. She's been reading she asked us to fill in different points, and I filled in for her. I read for about an hour, and I read about the rape. I happened to, I didn't I didn't look at my segment that I would be reading from the files, but the segment that I read was grand jury testimony. I'll share it with you guys at a live later on today to the extent that I can, that I have time for. But it was the actual details of one young 13 to 16-year-old girl throughout a period of 4 years, 13 to 17, 18, who was groomed and raped by pieces of shit like Epstein, very likely, I don't know if her directly, but pieces of shit like Trump, other garbage animals. And I read it's one thing when you hear about it, it's another thing when you read the actual rape, actually what happened in detail. I was pretty broken at 5:00 this morning, when I read that. 35 pages of testimony about rape. Ghislaine Maxwell and, Jeffrey Epstein, certainly Donald Trump, and all the rest of the creeps. And this animal here, this fucking monkey for the village idiot Donald Trump, is covering it up. I don't have enough. The poverty of language disallows me to find the effective words of disdain that I feel for this animal. Anyway.
Attorney General, thank you. I recognize now the chairwoman of the full committee, Senator Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, yesterday the Justice Department announced the creation of a nearly $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund to compensate individuals who were purportedly targeted by the Biden administration, in exchange for which President Trump dropped his $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS for the completely inappropriate leak of the president and his organization's tax data. Amounts for this new fund will come from the Judgment Fund, a permanent law appropriation for paying claims and settlements brought against the United States government. Amounts in the Judgment Fund have traditionally been used for the payment of specific claims against the government or amounts owed for the settlement of those claims, but not for future claims that have yet to be bought. So I have some questions for you. First, has the DOJ ever used amounts in the Judgment Fund to pay claims that have yet to be brought against the United States government based on the settlement of a completely unrelated case?
Thank you, Senator. So the short answer is yes. I mean, we have done this in the past. This was done during the Obama administration, something almost identical in structure to what we announced yesterday. In that case, there were allegations made by Native Americans that the Department of Agriculture had systematically treated them unfairly, and some had filed claims. There was a pending lawsuit, but many had not. A fund very similar to the one that was established yesterday was set up. It was funded by, in today's dollars, a little over $1 billion. And a single claims commissioner was appointed to review the claims and to distribute funds. In that case, at the end, there was around $300 million left over. And the Obama administration had set it up so that money from the Judgment Fund was distributed to nonprofits and other NGOs. So what we've done with this fund, and by the way, it is true that this is unusual. That is true. But it is not unprecedented, and it was done to address something that had never happened again either. So there is an unprecedented nature of what we did yesterday in response to years and years of weaponization. Just to correct a few things, Senator, it's not limited to Republicans. It's not limited to Biden.
That was.
It's not limited to the Biden weaponization. It's not limited to, in any way, scope or form to January 6 or to Jack Smith. There's no limitation on the claims. And the other thing we've done, just to finish up in comparison to what was done previously, is we intend to appoint 5 commissioners. And also, at the end, the money goes back. Any leftover funds go back to the federal government, not to nonprofits.
So how will the commission that you've just referenced that oversees the fund determine whether future claims from the fund are eligible to be paid out of it? And how will they determine how much will be paid for each claim? What's the legal basis for those decisions?
So there's commissions that are established all the time where a commissioner is charged with determining the correct amount, if any, to repay a claimant who's asking for funds. So in this case, what we expect is the commissioners will take in information. It's entirely voluntary. If an individual wants to apply and assert that they were a victim of weaponization, and the commission can do anything according to what was set up yesterday, from issuing an apology to the claimant to awarding compensation and the monetary compensation. So it depends on the claim, and there will be 5 commissioners who will review each claim. It won't be reviewed by me. It won't be reviewed by others in the administration. It'll be reviewed by the 5 commissioners.
All of whom are going to be
Those
Trumpian
commissioners appointed
ass
by the
kissers.
president?
No, they're
Who are
appointed
they
by,
appointed by?
4 of them are appointed by the Attorney General, and 1 of them is appointed by the Attorney General in consultation with leadership of this body.
Which is basically being appointed by
Will
Trump.
the information related to the claims be publicly reported?
So that's a good question. I mean, look, there's privacy laws that exist, so I don't want to say
There are no
today and
privacy
say
laws that
every
affect this.
scintilla
What a
of data
piece
collected
of
will be
absolute
released, but
shit.
Of course, I mean, of course, there's
Your money, guys.
There's accountability.
Your money.
That the commission
This is what it's
has,
being
a
used
quarterly
for.
report that has to come to the Attorney General, which will certainly be public. There's a process that you all will get information, and there's a FOIA process. So I very much anticipate that the claims that are awarded, the basis and the amount will for sure be made public along the way.
Let me switch to a different issue which Chairman Moran brought up. Along with Chairman Moran and other members of this committee, I was one of the lead sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization.
It would be a rare moment that I would turn the sound down when they're talking about the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, but that's going to be reauthorized. There's not going to be any sort of a fight in Congress. And Senator Collins is so fucking useless on her best day. She's done anyway. Graham Parker is going to beat her quite easily in the main election, and it's a shame her legacy is uselessness and being very concerned. And again, she's such a coward because the best she could muster up on challenging Todd Blanche about the fucking slush fund for whoever Donald wants to have the money, the best that she could come up with was, has this ever been done before? I want to know if anybody has ever been involved with this kind of thing before, which gives, ass-face Blanche the opportunity to bullshit us about the Obama administration did it for, Obama administration didn't use, I'd have to look up the specific issue with Native Americans, whether it was some sort of reparations or compensations for being wronged by the government. But the Native Americans have been wronged by our government for 175 some odd years now, right? And on top of that, they're not being paid by, federal taxpayer dollars because they were fucking criminals that were prosecuted. So that's going to be the reason now. Now the excuse is Obama did it, and it was the Native Americans. And again, Collins is pathetic. Her legacy should be pathetic. She should be ashamed of herself. In a rare moment of something, she's a fucking coward like she always is. I'm sorry, but I'm very, very frustrated by
Attorney
this.
General, this is an outrageous,
Senator Van Hollen.
unprecedented slush fund that you set up. Simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it explained,
Will they
anybody
be
is,
just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
as was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they're a victim of weaponization.
Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you this. Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I
You're
expect that there
appointing
will be
4 of the
rules
5
set up.
members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me?
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing
You can
all 5
certainly
members.
set up the rules. I would hope you would make a rule that anyone convicted of assaulting a police officer or a violent crime is simply not eligible. They should not apply.
Well,
Let me ask you this, because you compared it to the Keepsiegel case. But I think you know full well that in that case, the settlement agreement was approved by a federal judge, including the payments to people who were not originally parties to the lawsuit. No federal judge has approved this fund, have they, Mr. Attorney General?
no federal judge did approve this.
So that's a big difference between this case and the
Amen.
case that you compared
And you
it
pulled
to.
it out before a federal judge could get to it.
Did a judge sign off on this case?
No.
No.
A judge did sign off on the other one.
Yes.
But your question was whether it's a big
Shut the
difference.
fuck
It's
up,
not.
Blanche.
Of course it is, because that allows for an independent person to look at it rather than the
There was no
former
independence.
personal
There was no independence. There was
attorney.
a single commissioner. A judge signed off on it. A judge had nothing
Mr.
to do
Attorney
with
General,
deciding the money.
there was a judge who looked at it and signed off on it. So to compare that case to this one is incredibly deceptive. Let me ask you this about the Epstein case, because as we speak, many Epstein survivors are in New York. They're reading portions of the Epstein files about the abuse that they suffered. Otherwise, they might have been here with us today. At a House hearing, your predecessor refused to acknowledge the pain experienced by some of those victims when the administration improperly released their names in identifying information. So I want to know where you stand. I spoke to the representatives of some of the Epstein survivors yesterday. They are extremely frustrated that you keep calling for people to come forward with more evidence, but you have not met with them to hear their stories. So simple question. If I connect you with these survivors, will you meet with them?
Absolutely. And what you just said is false. I have met with them. I've met with many of the lawyers for the survivors of victims, as did Attorney General Bondi. So whoever told you that, unfortunately, gave you bad information.
Okay.
But I would encourage them. I would encourage them to reach out to the Department of Justice, because like we do every single day, we absolutely care for victims, and we absolutely want to hear from them and their lawyers.
Well, I've been told directly from the representatives they've not had a chance, at least this group, to meet with you. So
Did they
anyway,
represent that they asked?
So I'm glad to hear
Did
that.
they represent they asked for a meeting?
Can I?
They have asked for meetings. Many of you were here. I've interviewed one of the key lawyers, in my lives, for the victims, one of the lawyers for the victims. The Department of Justice has not, to this day, reached out to victims. Blanche is lying about other people lying. He's lying about Von Hollen lying.
Can I ask you to commit that the Justice Department will not recommend a pardon for anyone named in the Epstein files?
Can you repeat that question? I'm sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
Can you commit that the Justice Department, you, the acting Attorney General, will not recommend a pardon for people named in the Epstein files?
When you say people named, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of, quote, people named.
How about Ghislaine Maxwell? Can you commit that you will?
Yes, I can commit to that, of course.
Okay. Let me go back to
Of course,
this
like it was a bad, he shouldn't have asked the question. Of course he
Because
should have.
There's also an individual who, after being pardoned by the president, went on to molest 2 children. And that person actually tried to buy the silence of these children by saying that he would pay them some of the funds that he was hoping to get from your slush fund. Can you commit to making the rules so that that person is not eligible for a payout under this fund?
Well, you're obviously lying in your question, because there's no way that this person committed to that. But the slush fund, as you call it, which is not, didn't exist.
I'm sure.
But I can commit.
Mr. Attorney General, don't ever do that again. I am reporting
what again?
what he said. He said on the expectation that he hoped to get some of the funds from a payout. He's been
From
hearing
the,
what
you
we've
said
all
from
been
the
hearing.
slush fund, Senator, and that didn't exist when he said that.
This is the fund that the president and all of you have been telegraphing all along that you're going to use to help the president's friends.
Can you point to a
Mr.
single
Attorney General,
telegraph
I have a
I
last
made?
question.
What telegraph did I
I have a last question for you. Do you know that it is a criminal offense to lie to Congress?
I am very well aware of that.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Good.
Senator Kennedy.
Hopefully Kennedy will find some balls, but I doubt it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Senator.
In America, unlike other countries, where they let you die in a ditch, in America, if you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. Isn't that right?
It is.
And one of the programs we do that through is Medicaid.
Correct.
Okay. And this money for Medicaid, it didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets, didn't it?
Every dime of it.
You know where he's going,
And
right?
some of that money is stolen.
Somalia. The
And the
Somalians,
states,
Somali community
not all of
in
them,
Minnesota.
But many of them allow it to be stolen, don't they?
Yes.
Let's take Medicaid in California, for example. I don't mean
That is a nasty
California,
little state, that
but
California.
because this
They
happens in
steal
other
it all the
states. We saw it
time.
happen in Minnesota, for example. But in California, for every dollar that the California state government puts up for Medicaid,
I can't. I just can't fucking listen to him. I'm sorry, guys. I know it's, if you want to listen to this shit, I get it. I go to C-SPAN. You know, I'll bring him back on in a second. But if you are joining us live, or if you're joining us, on YouTube or on Substack, through the recorded version, I when I do these hearings and I listen to cowards like Senator Kennedy, who you've got the most objectively corrupt, pathetic imbecile in the Trump administration right now. And when I say the most, because he's the guy that's prosecuting, that's trying to enact Donald Trump's revenge on his perceived enemies. Todd Blanche is the guy that just created a 1.776 million slush fund for whoever the village idiot Donald Trump deems were weaponized by the government, by Biden. And that's certainly going to include the January 6th creeps. They're all going to try to get their money. You're going to see, I think it's very likely you're going to see like Enrique Otero, the former Proud Boys leader, who had 20 years, was convicted sentenced to 20 years for seditious conspiracy. And what's his name? Rhodes, the Oath Keepers creep. That motherfucker, 20 years, both pardoned, sentence commuted by the idiot Trump. I'm sure you're going to both see them file multi-million-dollar claims. They're going to be there. I wouldn't be surprised if they're both millionaires by the end of the month. 2, 3, 4, 5 million. I calculated out that if every one of the 1,500 insurrectionists who are all going to file claims from January 6th, if every single one of them was filed a claim, they'd each get over $500,000 each, right? So, and this piece of shit, Todd Blanche, covering up the Epstein files. He's so incompetent to be the chief prosecutor of the United States, to be the prosecutor. You wouldn't hire him to run a night shift at a 7-Eleven because you couldn't trust them, right? For Kennedy to normalize this by speaking about anything else, at least Collins, as much of a coward she is, at least she kind of went there. pathetic effort to go there, but at least she kind of did. Kennedy is, you know, talking about how, obviously bringing in the racist idea that the Somalis in Minnesota are stealing all your Medicaid money. We got to get rid of them. We got to send them back to Somalia with Ilhan Omar, right? I mean, he's going there. Anything to distract from reality. And again, I don't know when Kennedy is up for. I think every Republican now. I don't think he's running for re-election in 2026. I don't think, but I think every Republican everywhere is potentially on the chopping block. You're right, Gail. Kennedy's just doing his assignment. Is up for whenever they're reelected, as long as the village idiot Donald Trump is president. Hang on, let's see who we're going to next.
Slush fund. You want to talk about slush fund? This is a tier 1 slush fund.
It's them Somalis. Them Somalis have created themselves a big tier 1 slush fund of Medicaid. So I think it's perfectly okay that the President of the United States is taking $1.7 billion and giving it to real criminals. That's a slush fund. That's not a slush fund. That's just a pay the people fund because they've been treated badly fund.
Believe that it needs its own stand-up structure, and I think it's true for the reasons that you just said.
If you need an exorcism, you can go to California, can't you?
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Chairman Moran, Ranking Member Van Hollen. Thank you, Acting Attorney General Blanche, for appearing before us today. I want to talk about some areas where I think we're making progress and we can work together, and then raise some real concerns I have. I do think it's worth recognizing the hard work of the men and women of the department and the progress you're making on combating fentanyl and violent crime.
Senator Coons, who gives a shit? Just get to the fucking point, Senator Coons. Don't waste time with this.
I was pleased to see the president's message during Second Chance Month, where he said he wants to ensure those who take responsibility and seek to rebuild their lives.
You have 5 minutes. You have 5
Senator
minutes,
Lee and I
Senator
have a bill
Coons.
called
Don't
the
fuck
Safer
this up,
Supervision Act.
especially because I can't take
It's
it.
co-sponsored by Senators Tillis and Wicker, Kramer and Langford. It's got strong law enforcement and conservative support, and it fits squarely in that framework. Currently, federal supervision is imposed in nearly every case, leading to badly overworked federal probation officers who then can't properly
5
supervise
minutes, Senator
those
Coons.
who actually most need it. There's more than 120,000 people on average per year being supervised, and this bill would help ensure courts are more thoughtful, more analytic when deciding when to impose supervision.
Just fucking get to the point.
Is this a piece of legislation you can support?
So what you
I cannot take it. What is wrong with these fucking senators? This is not the moment to give them any oxygen. You get to the fucking point. You hammer his ass to the wall. Democracy is on the line.
I've been gravely concerned about
IP
theft, especially from China, the whole time I've served. I was struck that the department's
Fucking
proposed
IP theft. Who gives a shit about fucking intellectual property theft? I'll talk about that with you guys. But not when you finally have Todd Blanche's feet to the fire.
You're calling it a cut, Senator. I would say that it's a major focus of
It's a lack of an increase?
Well, no. I don't mean lack of an increase. I mean that we're focused on it at the U.S. Attorney's Office level. So when we take money and spend it around the U.S. Attorney's offices, and so it's baked into that big number, rest assured, every U.S. Attorney's Office, all 93 of them, are focused on the threats that we have from there. And so we're trying to spend our money more wisely.
Chair Collins raised a concern about the Violence Against Women Act funds. Let me raise a concern about the Victims of Child Abuse Act programs. Senator Roy Blunt and I worked to reauthorize this program. I've long been actively engaged with it. I've seen.
Blanche doesn't give a shit. Making your argument for these imperative programs is fucking irrelevant. All they care about is the politics and the money. They're either going to move on those programs or not. The Violence Against Women's program, the Violence Against Children, but this is the moment to hammer him.
I agree with you, and I want to work with you to make sure that we're spending that $41 million where we should. I agree with you. It's extraordinarily important.
3 of his 5 minutes just fucking wasted. And Blanche gets a pass. And that's why we're in the situation we're in.
Questioning from the ranking member, Senator
Thank you.
Van Hollen,
It's about time.
that I strongly agree with. I'm just looking at the settlement agreement in
Yes.
Trump versus IRS, and I just want to make sure I heard you properly when you responded previously. Your announcement said that the fund will send you quarterly reports. Will you commit to making these reports fully public so Americans know who's getting taxpayer dollars out of the settlement fund? This says they'll be confidential. This is Section 4, Part E of the settlement agreement.
The reason why I want to be careful in my answer is because there's obviously laws that exist around privacy that may prevent some of the information that the commission takes in from being fully public. Beyond that, there will be full transparency, and I commit to you that beyond the applicable laws that exist around privacy and privileges and whatnot. But as far as being transparent and having those quarterly reports released, yes.
Thank you. You referenced a previous case. I think it was Keepsiegel versus Vilsack under the previous administration. Did that case involve a president suing his own government and then settling that case before it could be reviewed or approved by a judge?
So no, neither does the commission.
It did not. And so when you suggested that they're nearly identical, they're not identical. I think there's a critical difference here. President Trump is the first president to sue his own government and then direct his chosen acting attorney general to reach this kind of settlement. Will you commit that none of President Trump's family will receive a direct payout from this fund?
Well, yes, but what you just said is not true. I mean, if I can correct that.
Please.
The president did not direct me to do anything. And secondly, when we said it was that the structure of the commission is similar to Keepsiegel, that's true. It wasn't the case. The underlying case is not the same. The structure of the commission is the same as the Keepsiegel
Has
commission.
it ever happened that a sitting president sued his own government for $10 billion and then directed the settlement of the case and the establishment of a payout fund?
Not that I'm aware, but there's a lot of things that President Trump's the first of. No president had been indicted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Correct.
6, 7, 8 times either.
Correct. No president's been indicted. And will you commit that none of this money will go to President Trump's campaign donors?
I am not committing to anything beyond the settlement agreement itself. When you say campaign donors, that they are not excluded from seeking compensation.
Last
They're
question.
weaponized.
During Police Week, I heard from a number of law enforcement friends who found it appalling that there was the possibility that folks like the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, who had assaulted Capitol police officers, could receive multi-million-dollar payouts from this fund.
Yes.
Will you commit that no one who has been convicted of assaulting a police officer will receive a payout from this fund?
So I shared the concerns that apparently members of law enforcement gave to you last week, although none of this was announced last week, so that's surprising. But
They had
I
heard
accept
rumors
that.
there would be a settlement fund.
And there was plenty of fucking
But
reporting about it.
Anybody can apply. The commission will set. The commissioners will set rules. I'm sure. That's not for me to set. That's for the commissioners. And whether an individual, an oath keeper, as you just mentioned, applies for compensation, is anybody in this country can apply.
Well, we'll be watching this very closely as this goes forward. I don't think the settlement fund should be set up this way or for these purposes. I appreciate your answers today. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Attorney General, thank you for being here this morning and responding to our questions.
Hopefully
I wanna,
Murkowski will
follow on
have
a
some
couple that have
courage.
been asked with regards to the Department of Justice's state and local law enforcement programs. $1.2 billion in proposed cuts. We're looking.
All right. Nothing meaningful from Murkowski. Who would have guessed? We'll check in with her in a minute. Look, I have nothing against Senator Coons. He's a good senator. But this is why we need really strong younger senators. Hey, Irish Aggie. We need strong younger senators because if you saw the way, this should not be a conversational type situation, considering where the moment we find ourselves in. Every conversation, every interaction with Blanche right now should be confrontational. Every interaction between any Democratic senator right now with Blanche should be hyper confrontational. The breadth and depth and scope of what Blanche is covering up with the Epstein files, what he is involved with this staggering corruption, with this with suing the federal government, and then the the slush fund is in essence, was the settlement agreement. Even if it's not officially, that's exactly what it is. They should be hitting Blanche. They don't even have to be seriously intellectual about it. There's so few facts that are necessary because the facts speak for themselves. Senator Coons should have started with your Attorney General Blanche. You're disgusting. Your behavior is disgusting. It is authoritarian in nature. You should be ashamed of yourself. My first question for you is, this is what you are doing with this settlement is borderline illegal. It's only illegal because Donald Trump has absolute complete immunity. What about you? Do you think you're going to have immunity after 2028? And then when Blanche starts to answer, he should be immediately cut off and say, no, this is obviously what it is. There's nothing, I'm not going to sit here and allow you to lie. I'll just speak instead of allowing you to lie. But if I had a confederacy of questions, I would hammer him with the same question over and over and over. Why do you think this is okay? Why do you think it's okay that taxpayer dollars should be focused on a slush fund for the president? Well, it's not a slush fund. Shut up, Blanche. Shut up, Mr. Attorney General. It literally is a slush fund. This is black. It's a black glass case. You can tell me that it is, that it's a pen, but everybody knows it's a black glass case. So because you're incapable of sincerity, I'll tell you what it is. Then you go right to the Epstein files. Clearly, Donald Trump was mentioned hundreds of thousands of times, if not in the low millions of times in the Epstein files. Clearly, you're hiding 3 million files that you refuse to share with us. Why is that? And it should be one after another, after another, after another. Back him up against the wall, fluster him. He's clearly a nervous fucking wreck. Hang on.
May 5th is the day that we recognize as missing and murdered Indigenous.
He's clearly a nervous fucking wreck. He's clearly unprepared to handle these questions. And, if you had, this is where I miss Kamala, right? Kamala Harris being a senator from the great state of California. Because Kamala, in her 5 minutes, if she had 5 minutes with this dumb fuck, one-on-one in a Senate hearing, she would push him up against the wall. She would entrap him in his own lies. And she would humiliate him. And she would clarify, so the whole world could see it, what kind of a ass-kissing, sycophantic moron he is. And it's the responsibility, in my opinion, of every Democratic senator right now who has an opportunity to, ask him questions. This is what they should be doing. They should be, they don't need to be asking. Well, the Department of Justice, the line attorneys are so good and we're so proud of them. And law enforcement, we love our law enforcement. Nobody gives a fuck. We give a fuck about saving our democracy, right? First and foremost. We give a fuck about the fact that there's, that the rest of the world is investigating child fucking rapists. But we won't, our Department of Justice won't touch it, and they're protecting one of the biggest fucking rapists in the White House. Challenge him on that. Why doesn't a senator ask him straight up? Attorney General Blanche, did Donald Trump rape young girls? Is there files in those Epstein files that you haven't released? Is there proof that Donald Trump raped young girls? Remember, you're under oath, sir. And when he says no, then say, okay, then release every single one of them. Because I don't believe you. You're lying to me. You're committing perjury right now. There's enough circumstantial evidence to suggest that Donald Trump raped young girls. But you're not releasing those files because you don't want us to know that. And you, sir, does that make you an accessory to rape? Or just an accessory to a cover-up? Well, I take offense to that. That is good. Then release the files. Sorry.
Attorney General, for being here. As you alluded to in your opening statement, there is an acute staffing shortage at the Bureau of Prisons. At FCI Berlin in New Hampshire, staffing levels have dropped to 58% of authorized levels. And that's at a time when correctional officers are being asked to take on added duties.
You believe
where
this?
They have
I don't know.
detainees
What the
being sent
I
to
can't.
our federal prison. And the retention incentives have dropped significantly.
Is it me?
So as
Is
you
it me,
point out,
guys?
The Bureau
Maybe it
received
is.
an additional $3 billion in the reconciliation
Who
bill to
gives a
address staffing
shit?
issues.
Senator
And
Shaheen.
you're asking for additional funding, which I appreciate. But how do you plan to use those supplemental funds to
They
address
live in a
recruitment
fucking
and detention
bubble.
of staff at facilities like FCI Berlin?
Thank you for that question. It is
Thank
a
you for that
crisis.
question.
And the crisis on staff.
He should not be saying that. You've got an asshole protecting a global confederacy of rapists. And Senator Shaheen, the best she can come up with is there's fucking not enough staffing in the goddamn Department of Corrections. What about the fucking Department of Corrections at this asshole's orders moving the rapist Ghislaine Maxwell from a maximum security prison to a fucking penthouse with a goddamn therapy dog? What is wrong with these fucking Democrats? Whew. It's hot. I'm getting myself worked up, and it's 90-something degrees here in New Jersey, and I'm feeling it. I cannot believe what I am hearing.
I'm very pleased that we've got that New England Regional Drug Lab. I worked hard to try and...
Who gives a
support
shit?
the
You're
effort to
fucking
get it
useless
there.
right now.
But I'm concerned now that DEA doesn't have the personnel that they need.
I'm
in order
very
to fully
concerned. You
operate it.
sound like fucking
And when we
Senator
raised
Collins.
this at hearings, both in the House and Senate, with DEA, what they told us was that DOJ has routinely denied its request for greater allocations.
I can't believe I'm
personnel,
hearing this. I can't.
meaning that they are gonna
Other
have
than Senator
difficulty
Chris Von
hiring the
Hollen, who
sufficient
started and went
personnel they
right
need to
there.
fully operate this new lab. So can you commit that you will ensure that the personnel that are needed to operate the lab are able to be hired?
Yes, and our budget asks for that funding, and
Staggering.
I agree with you, Senator, that it's
Staggering.
crucial to have that.
Staggering.
And that there's shortages. You're right.
Let me weigh in on with Senator Collins and Senator Murkowski and their concerns about the Office of Violence Against Women and the grants. I don't support the cut of 20%.
Again, I agree with them not supporting the cuts to the Violence Against Women Act. I agree with it. But again, she's so fucking useless. Once you nail this piece of shit to the wall on all of the god-awful things he's doing, then you can smack him. That's your right hook. Jab him, jab him, jab him, right? Epstein, cover up, cover up, cover up. Slush fund, slush fund. Jab him, and then when you've got him up against the wall, hit him with a fucking left hook about cutting, funding to violence against women.
Ending from 25 that we expect to get out any day now, and then we'll start working on 26. And so it's done on a rolling basis, and we're working every day very hard to get that money out. As far as grants that were canceled, I believe 330 some were canceled, just about 5 or 6% of the overall grants awarded for various reasons. But grants that were more than that were initially canceled, and the grants.
But those are grants that had been approved by Congress that had already been sent out. Why is the department canceling funding that our organizations are depending on in order to help survivors?
Well, it's not that they were approved by Congress. The money was, and so for a very small portion of grants, they were canceled for various reasons. So
well, they were canceled because DOJ came in and made significant cuts, and the administration has made cuts. I guess I'm not going to argue with you about why that happened. I think it was wrong. I'm going to acknowledge your commitment to ensure that those funds are going to go out to the organizations that are depending on them so that they can serve the people who need it.
I commit to that.
Thank you. Last fall, the U.S. trustee for Region 1 didn't name a new Chapter 13 standing trustee for New Hampshire. Instead, he assigned New Hampshire's duties to Maine's standing trustee over the objections of the New Hampshire Bankruptcy Bar. The transition.
I mean, I cannot. I can't. I don't. I'm speechless. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. With ridiculous, I don't. I just. I mean, you guys, you come here all the time, right? We do this all the time. I mean, it's a rare moment that I'm at a loss for words. But I am at a loss for words. Let me hope there's something here.
A benefit in terms of savings. So I don't know if it was a shot at New Hampshire or what the issue was, but will you commit to name?
Will you commit? What about will you commit to holding rapists, child rapists accountable?
Okay, we have that in many districts, not just New Hampshire, and we're working very hard to rectify it for the reason.
Blanche is sitting here like, he's like, yeah, this is easy. Let's just do this. Let's do this all day.
Thank you. Mr. General, appreciate you being here today. I wanted to start with an issue that I raised with you in your confirmation hearing in the Senate Judiciary Committee. We talked about the Executive Office for Immigration Reform.
Go fuck yourself. I can't even. I can't even listen to any more of this. Well, guys, I have to be honest with you. I'm going to give it one more, one more senator and then Democratic senator, and and then I give up on this fucking hearing. I honestly am stunned. I did not think we would get. I didn't think by this moment. How long are we in? 51 minutes, 52 minutes. Just turned 52 minutes. This live's been going. Or at least my recording's been going. Yeah, live's been going 52 minutes too. I could never have envisioned this. I could never. Senator Von Hollen was pretty strong in the very beginning. The compliance scale, absolutely. She's thanking him left and right. Literally the day after the announcement of a 1.7 billion, 1.8, because it's 1776, 1.776 billion. Right, slush fund was created to compensate fucking criminals, right? I cannot, I can't wrap my brain around that. This is what we're hearing from Democrats in this, the Senate Appropriations Committee. I can't get over it. And meanwhile, shouldn't they be ashamed of themselves? Shouldn't Shaheen be ashamed of herself? I told you, like, when I was reading, the program that's going on in New York, as I told you about today, where there's a 24-hour reading of all the Epstein files that I participated in virtually. I read for about an hour today. And in the document that I was reading, this young girl, I'm going to just I'm not saying this to just sicken you. I'm saying this to help you understand the intensity of this moment. There was a young girl who was 13, 14 in the document, the grand jury testimony that I read, right? Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, hang on. Did the next Democrat come on?
So proud to see the crackdown on crime across.
Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell groomed this girl for several months with her mother. They were having a hard time with cash, and girl was 13 years old when it started. And Epstein and Maxwell, to the point where the mom and the girl looked at them as like Aunt Ghislaine and Uncle Jeffrey, right? That was the type of relationship. And then to give the mom a break after they had created this, Ghislaine would say, bring her over to the house in Palm Beach because they lived in Florida. She'd have fun at Palm Beach, go swimming, have good lunches. And then they started slowly grooming her, wear a bikini. Then a little later, they'd be sitting around and Ghislaine Maxwell would have her shirt off. And while Jeffrey and Ghislaine and the little girl were sitting together. And then, according to this testimony that I read, and it was an FBI agent testifying to this, at one point when the sexual abuse really kicked in, Epstein had her sit on his lap, and he masturbated with her on his lap. And that was the beginning of some 5-6 years of sexual abuse of this girl, handing her out to different pigs. Who knows if Donald Trump was one of them or not. Having this girl, and you see Katie Britt with her smile and her smug, congratulations. Katie Britt wasn't fucking reading the rape of this young girl. Like, this morning. This is what I mean by they live in a fucking bubble, right? Even when it's right in your face, right? They live in a safe bubble where they can protect the fucking idiot who's a rapist. And, I knew about all of this report, all of this stuff from the Epstein files prior to having read the actual details. I mean, specific details about the rapes and the grooming that I read through this morning and read it publicly. And when Republicans sit here and do what they're doing right now, but then Democrats like Jeanne Shaheen just there started asking, how can you ask about anything other than why are you covering up? Do you know that Jeffrey Epstein took a 14-year-old girl, had him sit on his lap, and masturbated? Let's hear what
you, Acting Attorney General. So the budget has a $500 million cut to the COPS grants. Those grants are certainly important to our local law enforcement, for staff, for equipment, for investigations. Is there any particular reason that you think the police departments need less money now than they did before? And would you be supportive if we advocate for more funding rather than less?
So local law enforcement needs all the money we can give them. I agree with that very much. And whether I would be supportive of more money that you all come together for local law enforcement. Yes, I will. I mean, look, this budget.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
There is a bill called the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act that senators on both sides of the aisle supported, including Senators Tuberville and Cornyn. And this is about the troubled teen industry, where there are basically all kinds of fairly unregulated, without oversight, companies that say, hey, you send your teen to us and we'll get them on the right path. This institutional care often results in institutional abuse. And what we did when we passed and funded that bill, because we had both authorized it and then we funded it, was to have the National Academies of Science study. Because there's 50,000 kids that are in these institutional settings each year. They're often taken away in the middle of the night under arrangements with the parents. The parents think they're sending their kids to get help, but often they're sending their kids into abuse. Will you take a look at this issue and just kind of track the National Academies as they proceed to study this? And if there are ways that we can reduce abuse, help us find that path.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. To follow up, you noted that it would be up to the 5 commissioners that you appoint to determine whether there are any guidelines. Will you encourage the folks that you select to ensure that folks who were convicted of violent acts against police officers do not get compensation from this fund?
Well, I expect they will. They don't have the option of establishing guidelines. The commissioners will establish guidelines, and so
Will you encourage them to have a guideline that says those who have been convicted of violent acts against police officers are not eligible?
I will definitely encourage the commissioners to take everything into account when determining who should get compensation.
But why not this specific issue of violent acts, convicted of violent acts against police officers? Do you feel they should get compensation after being convicted of violent acts?
My feelings don't matter, Senator. In my mind is not limiting to say this. Yes, I will commit to this or that. What I will commit to is making sure that the commissioners are effectively doing their jobs, and that includes setting guidelines like you're describing.
Okay, I'm disappointed that you feel it's acceptable that those who are convicted of violently assaulting.
Definitely did not say that. I didn't say I found it acceptable, Senator.
Will you agree to encourage those commissioners to set a guideline that compensation will not go to individuals who are convicted of assaulting police officers?
I expect...
Just a yes would answer my question, or a no.
A yes will not answer that question. I mean, you're asking whether I will encourage. I don't think that's a fair word. I don't think it's the Attorney General's job to encourage commissioners to do or not do anything.
Okay, well, we'll move on, but I will say that you have complete power over who you appoint, so you have huge influence. You are going to be evaluating the inclinations and attitudes of those who will serve, and certainly this looks extraordinary. You described it as parallel to a fund set up to compensate Native Americans who were discriminated against in the agricultural world. It's not parallel at all. President Obama did not sue his own Department of Justice. He did not have a judge saying that Williams had, how did she put it? Kathleen Williams, the judge handling the lawsuit, dismissed the case and finally admonished the government agency, notably the Justice Department, for not being transparent about the settlement deal. Williams previously assigned a group of attorneys to determine whether there was a conflict of case, since as sitting President Trump was suing entities, quote, entities whose decisions are subject to his direction. This type of conflict of interest is not at all involved in the fund set up to compensate those who are discriminated against in the agricultural realm. I want to go on to the Epstein investigation.
Thank you.
Closed or open?
When you say the Epstein investigation, what are you referring to, Senator?
Well, the FBI said in last year in July that it had closed the Epstein investigation. So I'm just using their words. Is it open or closed?
I don't believe the FBI said that.
Well,
I mean, if you're referring,
you're head of the Department of Justice. Is the Epstein investigation open or closed?
But I guess I don't understand what Epstein investigation means. The investigation
let me put it
Jeffrey
differently.
Epstein himself, yes, he's dead. Any investigation into potential other bad guys will always be open if we have evidence that supports in any way, shape, or form that we can make a case.
Okay, so Trump said in November, this was after the FBI, and it was the FBI words when they said the investigation was closed, but what Trump wrote in November of last year, I'll be asking the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and the Department of Justice, together with our great patriots, the FBI, to investigate Jeffrey Epstein's involvement and relationships with, and he gave a specific list, Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, people at J.P. Morgan, and many other people to determine what was going on. Is there a list particularly targeted at Democrats, as opposed to being, if you will, blind to party affiliation, investigations that are being pursued under your direction?
Any investigation, no matter Republican, Democrat, man, woman, old, young, any investigation will be open if the Department of Justice and the FBI have evidence that a crime's been committed. And that doesn't, I mean, you're talking about Epstein.
You commit to pursue regardless of political affiliation?
Excuse me, Senator?
Do you commit to pursuing investigations free of prejudice about party affiliation?
Of course, yes.
Well, you say of course, but this president has repeatedly spoken of an enemies list that he wants to go after, and I must say it's one of the symbols of the breakdown of a democratic republic when a president uses his Department of Justice, which you now head, to go after his perceived political enemies. I hope you won't be party to that. Thank you.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's why what happened during the Biden administration was so disgusting.
That is completely inappropriate and wrong. There is no comparison to the absolute fair-minded pursuit of justice under the previous administration and this administration's pursuit of an enemies list. Thank you.
Senator Murray.
I believe Senator Fisher was next. Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to cut this off,
Senator
but
Fisher, so glad of you to join us.
Thank you.
Trying to ingratiate myself with the ranking member of the
No,
committee.
you didn't see me at the kiddie table. It's fine. So, Mr. Attorney General, welcome.
I don't know who Senator Fisher is, to be honest.
Brought up to you about the consolidation of the grant programs.
Okay,
And also that the budget request is one.
So she's not going to talk about anything. I mean, at least Merkley went there at the end after wasting, 3.5 minutes, but at least he went there finally. But again, it's. I think with this Senate, I was just thinking while he was speaking, while I was like, I wrote I went onto Blue Sky to see if anybody else was complaining besides me, see if anybody else thought that this was just pathetic. And I'm checking now. I'm not seeing a lot of people, because the idiot also was having a press conference. So that people might have been focused on the imbecile's press conference. But maybe the thinking is, I was just kind of thinking, with these Democratic senators, if we all hammer him about the same thing over and over and over again, then we'll look bad, right? If we keep doing it, we're going to look bad. We're going to look like we're all hitting him with the same questions, and he's already answered the question, and he's not going to change the answer. So what we're going to do is we're going to spread it out over the course of the hearing. This is if there's any coordination at all, which it doesn't seem like there is, but maybe there is. We're going to spread it over the course of the hearing, and everybody's going to get to ask all their specific questions specific to their state, specific to the things that they want to be focused on in terms of the judicial budget. But then we're going to pepper our big picture questions in kind of throughout the Epstein cover up and the slush fund, the going after the idiot's political enemies, the fact that the Department of Justice is the village idiot's, legal law firm going after his enemies. They should be outraged, Gail, but I don't think that's. I think they're still stuck in this mindset where they're afraid to show their outrage because they're afraid of the voters. I really think this, and it's so stupid, so short-sighted, and so ignorant if this is the case. If you remember, talking about Senator Shaheen, I don't think Senator Coons wasn't one of these folks, but Senator Shaheen was. If you remember back during the Obamacare fight last year, when we were hoping that Congress would approve continuation of the Obamacare subsidies, and they wouldn't. And Democrats, would not agree to vote to fund the government unless Obamacare was funded. And remember, we went for weeks. Second longest, I think, shutdown in history, right? The longest was the next one over DHS, right? So we went for weeks. And Democrats had a strong position, right? Then you had a collection of Democratic senators. Shaheen was one of them. John Fetterman, of course, he's basically a Fox News Republican now. It's just a matter of Fetterman just needs to declare his allegiance whenever he's ready, to the idiot. And you had this handful of Senator Kaine, Senator Angus King, who's an independent that caucuses from Maine with the Democrats, right? And they couldn't do it, right? They didn't have it. They thought better of fighting because they're not fighters. They're mediators, right? And they're many of them have been in Congress for a really long time. I mean, not Fetterman, but the rest of these folks. And they don't fight. They don't have it. Senator Shaheen doesn't fight. She can't. She's not a fighter. You can see that, right? Senator Coons had it in him, but he's stuck in this mindset and this idea that they still haven't gotten that you're not interacting with normal people. You're interacting with wannabe authoritarians, with unqualified people, including Todd Blanche, people who are unfit, not just emotionally and ideologically, but they're unfit professionally to have the job that they have. Everybody in the Trump administration is unfit for the job. And they're not there. They're not there. You can't mediate with them. That's what they're not. They're not there to. You can't shame them and you can't mediate them, but you can humiliate them because you can break them, right? But we have them in the House, but we really don't have enough of them in the Senate. You've got Senator Von Hollen, you have Senator Chris Murphy, you have some Senator Warren, Senator Warnock, Senator Ossoff. Like, you've got senators who can press these assholes back to the wall, right? But there's not enough of them. And so when we have these mediators engaged in mediation, let's hear Senator Murray. Let's hope I'm wrong, and let's hope.
Inflation is at its highest level in years because of the president's policies. But instead of helping Americans get by, President Trump is literally using their tax dollars to set up a slush fund to enrich his own friends. On Monday, your department settled the president's lawsuit by setting up a fund with $1.8 billion, and you and the president will pick the handful of people who decide how that money gets doled out. So let's be clear. What we're talking about is nothing short of the sitting president of the United States looting from the Treasury for his own gain. Do you seriously think this arrangement is appropriate? The president telling the federal government to settle a case and let him pay billions to the people that he chooses?
What you just described wouldn't be appropriate, and that's absolutely not what happened, and that's not what's happening now. So you just set up a series of facts, most of which were not true.
No,
No, it's not. I mean,
the president has set up a slush fund, however you want to say that it got set up, and he literally will get to choose through his hand-picked appointees who gets paid that fund. That is absurd.
The president did not set up this fund. It's
Sure
not
did.
a slush fund. It's been done many times. We have lots of funds.
Well, I heard your response earlier to Senator Van Hollen. This is not comparable to the case that you cited. A judge was not involved. This is the president versus himself setting up a fund.
The judge wasn't involved in the distribution in the Keep Siegel case at all. It just wasn't. There was a single commissioner that was set up, not five. And so when
the judge signed off on that case.
Yes, it was at a much later point in the litigation.
That's
right.
my point. That is all.
This is how you do it.
I just have to tell you, this is corruption that has never been more blatant or more widespread. What is happening is you write the check, Trump and his cronies cash it. American taxpayers who are already being whacked with high prices are going to foot the bill. That's what we are seeing today, and that is what many of us are really, really angry about. So let me move to another topic. This Department of Justice is sending the message that if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you are well-connected,
it's about time.
You won't be held accountable even if you abuse children. You know us after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and DOJ finally began to release the files. Your department exposed survivors' names, their sensitive personal information, and even nude photos, while redacting names of alleged perpetrators of those crimes. The message that sends is this Department of Justice worked harder to protect the privacy of potential child abusers than the survivors. Your predecessor refused to apologize to those victims, but I want to give you the same opportunity to apologize for the way the department handled the release of these documents. Will you apologize to the survivors?
When the president passed the Epstein Transparency Act, that was the
Pardon
only
me?
time, when the president signed the Transparency Act, that was when we were legally allowed to release the files. Prior to the passage of the act, which you all passed, I agree.
That is
we
so
were
not the question I'm asking.
It was a question.
No.
You asked 5 or 6 questions. I'm answering them in order. That
No,
was one of the questions you
the
asked.
question I want you to answer
Good
is,
for her.
will you apologize to the victims whose names, sensitive personal information, and even nude photos were not redacted by your department? Will you
Of
apologize
course,
to them?
that was. We
Can I
never want to
hear it
release
today?
a single
That
victim's
is what
name.
they are hearing
But can I
want
answer the
to
question?
No,
please?
shut the fuck up,
I'm
Blanche.
asking if you'll apologize.
So I just said yes, but
So do
I would like an explanation to be given to that. What this act did is it required us to review over 6 million pieces of paper in a very short period of time. And so 0.001%, we made mistakes and we owned up to them. And the second that a victim or their lawyer told us that we made a mistake, we pulled that document down and we put lawyers 24/7 in being responsive to victims and their lawyers to make sure that we fixed every single problem. And so yes,
I
mistakes
hear
were-
your anger.
I'm not
and I
angry.
will
No, I'm not
tell-
angry.
I hear
I'm
your
just
anger,
making sure
and I
it's
will tell you
understood
who's really
that
angry is
we
people who had
matter.
their
that-
nude photos released. I just want to hear you say, I apologize to those victims.
So, as I just said, of course, any time
Well, say
we
it.
release a victim's name that shouldn't be released, we have failed as a Department of Justice. And so we have to do everything that we can to not
So-
fail.
Well,
And so
I haven't heard the words, I apologize.
I'm trying to give you
those
an
victims.
explanation of what happened.
She doesn't
I don't
want an
think you're really
explanation.
interested in that because you
Oh,
keep
well,
on
I
cutting
am,
me
but
off.
I have a few more questions here, and I want to know, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this, but I want to ask you, will you personally commit to meeting with the survivors? I have heard from them personally that DOJ refused to meet them, and I'm asking about you. I'm asking about the Justice Department reaching out to them to be heard, not waiting for them to navigate a legal system that has obviously repeatedly failed them so far.
Can I answer?
Yeah, will you reach
Okay,
out to them?
so as we have said repeatedly, of course, any lawyer, now if a victim has a lawyer, I'm not allowed to reach out to the victim directly, you know that. But any lawyer can reach out to the Department of Justice. They have, and I've met with many victims and their lawyers, as has the FBI, as has the SDNY. We will always meet with victims' counsel. Any victim
will
or their
always
lawyer
meet
can
with
come forward to the
victims' counsel.
FBI
With these
at any
women,
time.
and I've met with them, and I know Senator Van Hollen has, and so many other, they are personally so feeling abused again and again and again by what happened to them originally, and now but what's happening by them. I am saying to you, as a human being, who don't make them navigate a system that is impossible to navigate, that's already abused them. Reach out and ask to meet
So
with
wait,
them.
you're
That is
asking
all
me
I'm
to
asking.
call, you want me to personally call the victims? Is
I
that what
can
you're
help
asking
you
me to do?
reach them.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, because we have said
And
from
you
day
will meet
one,
with them if
of
I reach
course,
out to you.
there have been members that have done that. And we immediately reach out to the victims or their lawyers when the lawyers want
Well,
and say they want to do it.
We will follow up on that. Thank you very much.
Let me ask you a few questions, and then we'll get to Senator Reid and Senator Peters, and then we'll have a conclusion of the hearing. I want to. Oh, yes, and Senator Gillibrand. Excuse me for my lack of peripheral vision. We'll make certain, Senator Gillibrand, that you are called on. General, worried about staffing and operation.
I don't give a shit about Republicans normalizing it, whoever Jory Moran is. I mean, thank God Senator Murray, did what she just did. That every, I mean, again, I can be an armchair quarterback, right? And say, I would have liked to have heard her say, obviously you won't apologize. Let me move on. Or obviously you're protecting pedophiles, and if you apologize, that would be indicative of the fact that you don't want to infuriate pedophiles like the president of the United States and other pedophiles who are pulling your strings. So I'm going to move on. You're not going to apologize. I would have preferred that, but imagine if by the time Senator Murray had an opportunity to cross-examine this idiot, if everyone else, because Senator Van Hollen started, right? Imagine if every other Democrat would have done, Senator Shaheen, are you listening? Because maybe you can get a fucking clue at some point. Imagine if every other Democratic senator would have just did what Senator Murray did. Exact same set of questions, pushing him back against the wall on that set of questions. He would be he would be angry, he would be embarrassed, he would be defensive. He would be so frazzled now because there's nothing that he can really. There's nothing refutable, right? There's nothing he can't argue. I mean, he can make shit up, and he can. Did you see how Senator Murray did such a good job when he tried to deflect, when he tried to talk about, we did it. This isn't the first time. She's like, no, fuck off. This is the first time this has been done, and stop it. And then he tried, and she was just like, just fucking stop it. And that's what I've wanted to hear from the other senators, not to let him speak incessantly and make up some bullshit. No, stop it. You're fucking ridiculous. Don't insult my intelligence. Insult your own. You're embarrassing yourself. Shut the fuck up, and I'll ask the next question because you're so ridiculous. Like, that was her implication, and he didn't like it. And then then his other tactic is to tell, which he's been doing this whole hearing, is to tell the Democratic senators that they're liars. And she was just like, stop it. Come on, stop. Get the fuck out. Stop it. Ridiculous. And imagine how different this hearing would have been at this point, how flustered he would be politically. The sound bites that you would see all over cable news. If Senator Coons, Senator Shaheen, trying to think who else went. Senator Coons, Senator Shaheen, I can't remember who else we were watching. But if they would have been as effective as Senator Murray was, and they would have focused on the same line of questioning instead of fucking North Carolina's whatever and staffing at the Department of Corrections. And then if you would have hit him with the funding cuts to abuse of women and to sexual abuse of children, which some of them did, but if you would have hit him with those additional issues after hammering him about covering up for the Epstein files, which is human sex trafficking of young girls and grown-ups, and then you hit him with those things, how effective would that have been? Incredible missed opportunity, but thankfully for Senator Murray, it was she was there to do something that mattered. And thank goodness for Senator Von Hollen. Anyway, guys, if this kind of content is helpful to you, please like and subscribe. If you're here on Substack, please consider a paid subscription or upgrading to a paid subscription. That's how I continue to do this work. But definitely subscribe either way, on YouTube, on Substack. I really want to get to 1,000 followers in each space. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. If you want to watch the rest of this hearing, it's just pop over to C-SPAN. It's actively going on. Pixie is over here right now. The dog is here. She knows that I'm wrapping up. So it's probably time to take her out. I'll see you guys soon. Thank you so much for being here. Love you guys. I'm sorry this was like such a stressful, it's such a stressful hearing. It didn't need to be, but sometimes I lose it when I'm watching this stuff if I'm not hearing what I think we need to be hearing. Anyway, I'll see you guys soon. Be well.